Jake Martinez stood at the viewing window of the Galactic Council station. His reflection stared back at him against the backdrop of Earth below. The blue planet looked peaceful from this height. Jake had served as Earth's ambassador for 3 years now, but he never tired of this view. His communication device buzzed. The screen showed Admiral Blake calling from the surface. Jake accepted the call immediately. His face appeared and Jake knew something was wrong. The Admiral's expression was tight with worry. "Jake, we have a situation," said without greeting. "Long-range sensors picked up unknown ships entering the solar system. They're not responding to any of our hails." Jake felt his stomach drop. How many ships? 200 capital vessels, maybe more behind them. Paused. They just dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Jupiter. They'll be here in hours. Jake turned from the window and walked toward the council chambers. "I'll alert the Galactic Council immediately. They need to know someone's approaching Earth without permission." Jake's voice stopped him. "These ships match the profile of Empire vessels. I'm mobilizing our orbital defenses now." The call ended. Jake stood in the empty corridor for a moment. The Empire. He knew that name. Every species in the galaxy knew that name. They had conquered 47 star systems in 300 years. Their method was always the same: overwhelming force, complete submission, no mercy. 6 hours later, the fleet arrived at Earth. Jake watched from the council station as massive warships positioned themselves above the planet. Each vessel was twice the size of humanity's largest orbital station. Their weapons powered up, energy readings going off every chart. Captain Lisa commanded Earth's orbital defense network. Her voice crackled over every military channel as she ordered her forces to defensive positions, but Jake could hear the fear beneath her steady tone. Earth had 12 orbital defense platforms and 50 patrol ships. They had 200 warships. The fleet commander broadcast on all frequencies. His image appeared on every screen across Earth and the orbital stations. He was tall, his skin a pale gray color, his eyes completely black. He wore armor that seemed to shift and move like liquid metal. "People of Earth," the commander said, his voice translated by automated systems. "I am commander of the Empire. Your planet has been selected for incorporation into our domain. You have one option: surrender. Comply with our demands, and your species will survive as workers for the Empire. Resist, and you will be eliminated." The transmission cut off. Moments later, the bombardment began. Jake watched in horror as bright lances of energy fell from the ships. They struck cities across the globe. New York, London, Tokyo, Mumbai. The explosions were visible even from space, bright flashes that lit up the night side of the planet like lightning. Lisa ordered the defense platforms to return fire. Missiles and energy weapons shot toward the fleet. Most of the attacks were absorbed by enemy shields that glowed blue under impact. A few missiles got through, scoring hits on smaller ships, but causing no serious damage. The response was immediate and brutal. They targeted the orbital platforms one by one. Jake watched as the first platform exploded, then the second, then the third. Within 15 minutes, all 12 platforms were destroyed. The patrol ships fared no better. They were faster and harder to hit, but they were also much weaker. One by one, they fell. Lisa's ship was among the last to go down. She managed to evacuate most of her crew to escape pods before her vessel broke apart. But Jake knew that dozens of other ships hadn't been so lucky. Thousands of people had just died, and the battle had barely begun. On the ground, things were even worse. Troop carriers descended through Earth's atmosphere, landing in 12 major cities. The ships were huge, each one carrying thousands of soldiers. When the landing ramps opened, the ground forces marched out in perfect formation. General Brandon Cole watched from his command post deep inside NORAD Mountain. His forces engaged in street-to-street fighting. Human soldiers fired everything they had at the enemy: bullets, missiles, tank rounds, artillery, but the soldiers wore armor that shrugged off most attacks. Their weapons fired beams of superheated plasma that melted through walls and vehicles like paper. Brandon coordinated the defense as best he could. He called in airstrikes. Fighter jets screamed overhead, dropping bombs on positions. Some of the attacks worked. Some soldiers fell. But for everyone that died, 10 more advanced. The human casualties mounted faster, much faster. In Washington, President Anderson gathered her cabinet and military leaders. They met in the underground bunker, listening to reports from around the world. Every report was the same. Heavy losses, falling defensive lines, civilian casualties in the millions. Options demanded, her voice hard despite the fear in her eyes. General Brandon Cole spoke from his video link. Conventional weapons aren't enough. Their armor is too strong, their shields too effective. We're losing ground in every engagement. Nuclear weapons, someone suggested. That would kill our own people, said, and based on what we're seeing, I'm not sure it would even stop them. Dr. Gregory Shaw had been sitting quietly in the corner. Now he leaned forward. Gregory ran the most classified research facility on Earth, one that even most government officials didn't know existed. He was thin, older, with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many secrets. Madam President, Gregory said carefully, there is another option, but it involves revealing something we've kept hidden from the galactic community. Turned to him, what are you talking about? Project Cerberus, Gregory said. We developed it after achieving faster-than-light travel, just in case we encountered hostile forces. It was designed specifically for a scenario like this. Why haven't I heard of this? Demanded. Because the previous administration decided it was too dangerous to disclose. They feared the Galactic Council would demand we destroy it. Gregory pulled up a holographic display. But right now, Madam President, this might be our only chance. Before could respond, Commander broadcast again. His face filled every screen across the planet. Humans of Earth, he said. You have fought bravely but uselessly. Your military is broken. Your defenses are destroyed. I am a generous commander, so I will give you 48 hours to surrender. If you comply, only your freedom will be taken. If you resist, we will execute 1 million of your people every day until you submit. The choice is yours. The transmission ended. The room fell silent. Turned back to Gregory. Tell me about Project Cerberus. Tell me everything. Gregory nodded and began to explain. As he talked, his expression changed from shock to determination. When he finished, she looked around the room at her advisors and military leaders. Authorization codes, she asked. Gregory provided them, entered the codes into her terminal. Across the planet, in facilities hidden deep underground, systems that had been dormant for years began to wake up. Power readings spiked. Energy signatures blazed to life, so strong that they showed up on sensors across the entire solar system. In orbit, Commander noticed the readings. He frowned at his tactical display. What is that? He demanded of his crew. His sensor officer checked and rechecked the readings. Unknown, Commander. Multiple power sources activating across the planet's surface. The energy output is enormous. Commander stared at the readings. A small voice in the back of his mind whispered a warning, but he pushed it aside. Humans were primitive. They had no weapons that could threaten the might of the Empire. He would learn how wrong he was. Deep underground, Admiral Blake stood in a facility that few people knew existed. Around him, thousands of pilots were waking up, climbing out of suspended animation chambers. They had volunteered for this years ago, knowing they might never wake up. Knowing that if they did wake up, it would be because Earth faced extinction. Watch them gather, these men and women who had given up normal lives for 40 hours before the deadline. Rachel Morgan sat in a preparation room deep inside the Colorado facility. She wasn't alone. 4,999 other pilots sat in similar rooms across the planet. They had all made the same choice years ago. They had all the same transformation. Lieutenant Commander Sanders entered the room. He was one of the project coordinators, someone who understood what these pilots had become. He carried a tablet displaying medical readouts. How do you feel? Asked Rachel. Like I've been asleep for 3 years, Rachel said. She flexed her hands, watching her fingers move. Everything felt slightly different, sharper, more precise. Is it still there? Nodded. The neural core is fully integrated. Your connection is stable. Actually, your readings are some of the best we've seen. Rachel closed her eyes. She could feel it now, the presence in the back of her mind. It wasn't another person. It wasn't artificial intelligence in the way most people understood the term. It was something else. Something that was both her and not her at the same time. Across the facility, Dr. Amy Preston walked between rows of equipment. She had been part of the team that made the initial discovery 15 years ago. Back then, she had been studying human neural patterns, trying to understand how the brain adapted to faster-than-light travel. What she found changed everything. Amy stopped at a monitor showing a pilot's brain activity. The patterns were beautiful in a way. Normal human neural activity looked like scattered lightning. But this pilot's brain showed something different. The patterns were organized, flowing, connected to something beyond the biological tissue. "It's still strange to see," said a voice behind her. Amy turned. Dr. Gregory Shaw stood there watching the same monitor. He looked tired. They all did. The invasion had caught everyone off guard despite years of preparation for this exact scenario. "We knew it might happen," Amy said. "We just hoped it wouldn't." Gregory nodded. "Did you ever imagine it would work this well?" Amy thought back to those early experiments. They had discovered that human brains, evolved under Earth's harsh conditions, had developed something unique. The neurons could interface directly with quantum computing systems in ways that no other known species could match. It wasn't telepathy or mind reading. It was synthesis, a true melding of biological consciousness and machine processing. "No," Amy admitted. "When we first tested it, I thought the subjects would lose themselves, become something not human anymore." "But they didn't," Gregory said. "No, they became something more." In another part of the facility, Danny Foster checked his ship for the 10th time. He had been an engineer before joining the program. He understood the technology better than most pilots. That understanding made what they were about to do both easier and harder. The ship sat in an underground bay held in place by massive clamps. It looked different from standard human spacecraft. The hull was sleeker, more organic in its curves. There were no windows, no visible seams where panels joined. The entire vessel seemed to have been grown rather than built. Danny placed his hand on the hull. He felt a response like a heartbeat pulsing under his palm. The ship recognized him. More than that, it welcomed him, because the ship wasn't just a machine, it was his partner, his extension, his other self. A technician approached. "Pilot Foster, your launch bay is ready. You're cleared for boarding." Danny nodded and walked to the entry point. The hull opened for him, metal flowing aside like liquid. Inside, there was no cockpit in the traditional sense. No controls, no buttons, no steering mechanism, just a chair surrounded by a sphere of soft blue light. Danny sat down. The moment he did, the light surrounded him completely. He felt the neural connection activate, spreading through his mind like warm water. His consciousness expanded, reaching beyond his body into the ship itself. He could feel the engines, the weapons, the sensors. They were all part of him now, all under his direct control. But he was still Danny Foster, still human, still himself. The machine augmented him but didn't replace him. Across Earth, 5,000 pilots completed the same process. 5,000 human minds linked with 5,000 ships. Each connection was unique, shaped by the individual pilot's personality and experiences. But they all shared one thing: unprecedented combat capability. Casey Wright was the youngest pilot in the program. She was only 17, but her neural plasticity was off the charts. The doctors said she adapted to the connection faster and more completely than any other test subject. They also said that made her the most dangerous pilot alive. Casey sat in her ship, feeling the systems come online around her. She could sense the other pilots now, their presence like distant lights in her mind. They weren't connected directly, but they were aware of each other. When they flew together, they could coordinate in ways that would seem impossible to outside observers. "All pilots, this is Admiral Blake's voice came through the ship's communication system, but Casey didn't hear it with her ears. She experienced it directly in her mind, filtered through the ship's neural interface. "Status check." One by one, the pilots reported ready. Casey was designated Echo 47. When her turn came, she simply thought the word ready, and the ship transmitted it. "Good," said. "In 6 hours, Commander's deadline expires. He expects us to surrender or die. We're going to show him a third option." Explained the plan. It was simple, really. The fleet sat in orbit, confident in their superiority. They had no idea what was coming. When the deadline hit, the human ships would launch from their underground bays. They would engage the enemy with everything they had. "Remember your training," said. "Trust your ships, trust each other, and trust yourselves. You are the finest pilots humanity has ever produced. Show what that means." The countdown began. Rachel Morgan used the time to center herself, to make sure her connection with the ship was perfect. She ran through combat scenarios in her mind, and the ship processed them with her, suggesting tactics and strategies faster than traditional computers ever could. She thought about her family. They had died in the first hour of the invasion, killed when a bombardment hit their city. The grief was still there, sharp and painful, but now it had purpose. Now it had direction. The timer reached 0. All across Earth, massive doors opened. The doors were hidden, disguised as ordinary ground features. Mountains split apart. Desert floors lifted. Ocean waters boiled and steamed as launch bays opened beneath the surface. 5,000 ships rose into the sky. Commander watched his sensors as the human ships appeared. At first, he was merely curious. Then, as more and more vessels launched, curiosity turned to concern. When the final count reached 5,000, concern became something else. "What are those?" he demanded. His sensor officer studied the readings. "Unknown design, Commander. They're smaller than our fighters, but showing massive power signatures. The energy output doesn't match their size." "Weapons status?" "All ships report ready, Commander. Our shields are at maximum. We outnumber them 40 to 1. Nodded slowly. The humans had hidden ships. That was clever, but numbers and size still mattered. The Empire had won countless battles against desperate enemies who threw everything they had at the superior forces. This would be no different. All ships ordered, engage and destroy, show no mercy. The fleet moved to intercept the human ships. Both forces accelerated toward each other. The distance closed rapidly. On traditional displays, it looked like a standard engagement, two fleets rushing to battle. But this battle would be anything but standard. Rachel Morgan was among the first wave. She felt her ship respond to her thoughts, accelerating beyond what they expected. The enemy opened fire early, streams of plasma cutting through space. But Rachel saw the attacks coming before they arrived. The neural connection gave her access to predictive algorithms that processed trajectory data faster than conscious thought. She moved, her ship twisted, and turned through the incoming fire with impossible grace. She wasn't dodging by reflex. She was dodging because she knew where each shot would be before it got there. Her return fire was equally precise. She targeted a destroyer, identifying weak points in its shield matrix through analysis that would have taken normal targeting computers several minutes. She executed the attack in 3 seconds. Her weapons, linked to her thoughts, fired in a pattern that overwhelmed the enemy's defenses in exactly the right sequence. The destroyer exploded. All around Rachel, the other human pilots were doing the same thing. Danny Foster took out a cruiser by firing into its engine manifold at the exact moment its shields cycled for a weapon discharge. Casey Wright, flying with terrifying precision, destroyed 3 fighters in 4 seconds, her ship moving through space like it was dancing rather than fighting. They fought back with everything they had, but they were fighting an enemy that didn't operate by the normal rules. Human ships moved in perfect coordination, not because they were following orders, but because they were sharing tactical awareness through their linked neural networks. They anticipated enemy movements, exploited weaknesses before they fully appeared, and struck with surgical precision. Commander watched his fleet fall apart. In 17 minutes, 43 of his capital ships were destroyed. Hundreds of fighters and smaller vessels were gone. His carefully planned battle formation had shattered against an enemy that moved like a single organism with thousands of parts. "Retreat," he ordered, his voice hollow with shock. "All ships retreat from the system, now." The surviving vessels turned and fled, accelerating toward the outer system where they could safely jump to faster-than-light speeds. The human ships didn't pursue. They had proven their point. Admiral Blake broadcast to the fleeing fleet. His message was brief and clear. "This is Admiral Blake of Earth Defense Command. You came to our world without provocation. You killed millions of our people. You demanded our surrender. Now you run. Leave this solar system and never return. If you come back, we will destroy every single one of your ships. This is your only warning." Commander received the message in his flagship. He sat in his command chair, staring at the tactical display that showed the remains of his once mighty fleet. He had conquered 20 star systems personally. He had never lost a battle, never even come close to defeat. Until today, 3 days after the battle, the Empire's response arrived. Emperor sat on his throne in the Imperial Palace, watching the recording of Commander's defeat. He watched it 3 times, his black eyes showing no emotion. Around him, his advisors waited in silence. "Unacceptable," finally said. His voice was quiet, but it carried absolute authority. "Assemble the Grand Armada, 800 ships. I want High Marshal to command, and I want Earth reduced to ash." The advisors bowed and left to carry out his orders. Within hours, the largest military fleet in history began gathering at the Empire's staging grounds. Ships from across conquered territories, vessels that had crushed entire civilizations, all moving toward one destination. Earth. On the planet's surface, Colonel Martin Price stood in the United Earth Council chambers. The room was full of leaders from every nation, all of them facing the same question: what do we do now? "We hurt them," Martin said, gesturing at the tactical display showing the retreating fleet. "But we didn't stop them. Intelligence suggests they're mobilizing their full military force. When they come back, it won't be 200 ships. It will be everything they have." President Anderson listened carefully. She had barely slept since the invasion began. None of them had. "What are our options?" "We can fortify Earth's defenses," General Brandon Cole suggested. "Prepare for a siege. Use our advantage to pick them apart as they arrive." "Or," Martin said slowly, "we don't wait for them, we take the fight to them." The room fell silent. Several leaders looked shocked at the suggestion. "You're talking about offensive operations," said, "taking human forces beyond our solar system to engage the enemy." "Yes, Madam President." Martin pulled up star charts showing territory. "We know their fleet is gathering. We know it will take them weeks to assemble and travel here. That gives us time to hit them while they're spread out before they can concentrate their forces." "That's insane," someone objected. "We barely survived one battle. You want to take the fight into their territory." Martin turned to face the council. "We have an advantage they don't understand yet. Our pilots can operate for weeks without rest. The neural connection sustains them. We can strike, retreat, strike again. We can harass their supply lines, destroy their reinforcements, keep them off balance. By the time they reach Earth, they'll be weakened, demoralized, and afraid." Admiral Blake, attending via video link, spoke up. "Colonel Price is right. Our advantage isn't just in combat, it's in endurance. Standard crews need rest, rotation, supply chains. Our pilots need far less. We can fight a campaign that would exhaust any conventional force." After hours of debate, made the decision. "We go on the offensive. Admiral Blake, you'll command the operation. How many ships do you need?" 300 said. "Leave the rest to defend Earth. If things go wrong out there, you'll need them." 2 days later, Admiral Blake led a fleet of 300 human ships beyond the solar system. Rachel Morgan flew in the vanguard, her ship cutting through space with smooth precision. Around her, the other pilots maintained perfect formation, their neural connections allowing coordination that would be impossible for normal crews. They traveled through unexplored space routes, using gravitational slingshots around stars to increase speed without using faster-than-light jumps that the might detect. It took 4 days to reach their first target, the Helios Nebula, where intelligence suggested the Vanguard would pass. Danny Foster helped plan the ambush. His engineering background gave him unique insights into how to use the nebula's interference to their advantage. The charged particles and electromagnetic fields would mask their presence until the perfect moment. "The think in straight lines," Danny explained to his squadron. "They expect enemies to meet them head-on. We're going to show them different." The Vanguard consisted of 80 ships, led by a commander named. They were moving at high speed, confident that no human force could reach them this far from Earth. Their sensors were focused forward, watching for threats ahead. They never looked inside the nebula. Rachel gave the signal. 300 human ships emerged from the interference like ghosts, their weapons already firing. They had seconds to react, but seconds weren't enough. The human pilots had planned every aspect of the attack, running thousands of simulations through their neural connections. Rachel targeted flagship. She knew exactly where to hit. The shields were strong, but they had to cycle to allow the ship's own weapons to fire. Rachel waited for that microsecond gap and fired. Her weapons punched through, destroying the flagship's main reactor. All around her, similar scenes played out. Danny destroyed a carrier by targeting its hangar bay doors at the moment they opened. Casey Wright, flying with her characteristic precision, eliminated the command and control ship, leaving the force blind and disorganized. The battle lasted 9 minutes. When it ended, 60 ships were destroyed or disabled. The remaining 20 scattered in all directions, fleeing in panic. Admiral Blake didn't pursue. Instead, he ordered the fleet to the next waypoint. This was just the beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, the human fleet struck 6 more times. Each attack followed the same pattern: appear without warning, hit hard, vanish before the enemy could respond. They tried to adapt, sending out scouts and picket ships. But the human pilots could detect the scouts before the scouts detected them. They could move through areas that standard ships couldn't navigate safely. Dr. Amy Preston traveled with the fleet, serving as psychological warfare advisor. She understood that this campaign wasn't just about destroying ships. It was about breaking the enemy's will. After each battle, the humans left messages. Not threats or insults, but simple facts. They listed the ships destroyed. They calculated the casualties. They noted how long each battle lasted. The message was clear: you can't beat us, and every moment you continue this war costs you more. But the campaign came with a price. Not every ambush went perfectly. They were learning, adapting to human tactics. They started using overwhelming firepower, saturating entire regions of space with weapons fire to counter human mobility. In the fifth engagement, Danny Foster's ship took a direct hit. His shields failed and plasma burned through his hull. He managed to destroy his target before his ship broke apart, but he couldn't escape. His neural core preserved his last moments of consciousness, a final record of his sacrifice. Rachel felt it when Danny died. They all did. The neural network that connected them carried echoes of his final thoughts. It was like losing a part of themselves. The price of their power was that they experienced each other's deaths intimately. He saved his squadron, Casey said later, her voice quiet. She was young, but the war was aging her fast. 7 ships would have been destroyed if he hadn't taken that shot. He was a good pilot, Rachel agreed. He'll be remembered. They held no funeral. There was no time. The war continued. High Marshal commanded the main armada from his flagship, a massive dreadnought called the Hammer of. He studied the reports of human attacks with growing frustration. He had fought in 30 campaigns. He had never faced an enemy like this. They fight like scavengers, his tactical officer complained. Striking from hiding, then running before we can respond. There's no honor in it. There's no honor in war, said. Only victory or defeat, and right now we're losing. He made a decision. The armada would split. Half would continue toward Earth under his subordinate's command. The other half, under himself, would hunt down Blake's fleet and destroy it. Once the human raiders were eliminated, they could proceed to Earth without harassment. It was a sound, tactical decision. It was also exactly what the humans wanted. Whilst forces hunted Blake's fleet through deep space, Earth's intelligence network made a discovery. The network consisted of listening posts humanity had placed during early exploration missions, small satellites designed to monitor local space traffic. Most people had forgotten they existed. But now those satellites picked up something interesting. A set of coordinates, communication traffic between ships, and in that traffic a location, prime, The intelligence analysts studied the data carefully. They tracked ship movements, supply routes, and military deployments. A pattern emerged. The Empire had pulled almost its entire fleet for the assault on Earth, that was defended by only a minimal garrison. The report reached President Anderson within hours. She read it 3 times, hardly believing what it suggested. They left their home undefended, she said to Colonel Martin Price. Not undefended, Martin corrected, but lightly defended. 70 ships in orbit, planetary defense systems, but nothing compared to what they sent against us. Can we reach it? We have the coordinates now. Yes, we can reach it. Martin pulled up calculations. 2 weeks of travel time, we'd need to avoid their patrol routes, but it's possible. Sat back in her chair. The moral weight of what they were discussing settled on her shoulders like a physical burden. Strike at the heart of the Empire, hit them where they felt safe. It was exactly what they had done to Earth. How many ships would we need? She asked. 200, Martin said. Our best pilots led by someone with experience. He paused. Commodore Stephen Palmer is available. He's been training reserve pilots since the invasion. He knows how to command. Made the decision. Authorize Operation Retribution. Pull the ships we need from Earth's defenses. We're going to hit them where it hurts. And if it fails, Martin asked quietly. Then Earth falls anyway, said. But if it succeeds, we might end this war before more people die. The preparations began in secret. 200 ships and their pilots assembled from across the defense network. Commodore Stephen Palmer took command, a veteran officer who had served in space for 20 years before the neural program began. Among the pilots selected was Casey Wright. Despite her youth, her combat record was exceptional. She would lead the Pathfinder Squadron, the ships that would navigate the dangerous route to Prime. On the eve of departure, Stephen gathered his pilots. They stood in the briefing room, these men and women who had become something more than human to save their species. "We're going to do something that's never been done," Stephen said. "We're going to strike at the heart of an empire. Many of you will not come back, but if we succeed, we might save billions of lives, both human and..." The journey to Prime took 14 days. Casey Wright led the Pathfinder Squadron through regions of space that no human had ever explored. Her neural connection with her ship allowed her to sense gravitational anomalies and spatial distortions that would have destroyed conventional vessels. She guided the fleet through a region called the Shattered Zone, where an ancient supernova had left space twisted and dangerous. Standard navigation would have taken weeks to plot a safe course. Casey did it in hours, her enhanced mind processing vast amounts of sensor data and finding paths that shouldn't exist. Commodore Stephen Palmer watched from his flagship as Casey's squadron cleared each obstacle. She was 17 years old. In another time, she would be worried about school and friends. Instead, she was leading 200 warships toward the capital of a galactic empire. War changed people. This war had changed everyone. On the 10th day of the journey, they passed through a debris field. The wreckage was old, scattered across several light years. Rachel Morgan's sensors identified it as the remains of 6 different civilizations. Ships from cultures that no longer existed, all destroyed by conquest. "They've been doing this for centuries," Rachel said quietly over the command channel. "How many species did they wipe out?" 47 confirmed, Stephen replied. "Probably more that we don't know about." The fleet continued in silence. Each pilot saw the debris. Each pilot understood what they were looking at. It wasn't just wreckage. It was a warning, a reminder of what happened to those who lost against the Empire. On the 12th day, they received an unexpected transmission. The source was, but the message was not hostile. A scientist named broadcast on a frequency that only the human fleet could detect. "Human ships," translated message said. "I am a researcher from Prime. There are many of us who oppose Emperor and his wars. We have been watching you. We know you approach we wish to help." Stephen considered the message carefully. It could be a trap, but his tactical analysis suggested it was genuine. He authorized a response. "Why would you help us?" Stephen asked. "Because our empire has become a monster," replied. "We watch our military destroy innocent civilizations. We watch our people celebrate conquest. Some of us remember when we were different, when we valued knowledge over domination. We cannot stop ourselves, but perhaps you can." Provided intelligence about Prime's defenses. The orbital garrison consisted of 70 warships and 12 defense platforms. The planetary defense systems were powerful but had blind spots. Most importantly, revealed that Emperor was on the coordinating the war from the Imperial Palace. "If you want to end this," said, "eliminating is the fastest way." Stephen thanked for the information but made no promises. He knew that attacking would change everything. It would prove that humanity could strike anywhere against anyone. That knowledge would ripple through the galaxy for generations. But it might also save countless lives. On the 14th day, the human fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel directly in orbit of Prime. The planet was beautiful in a cold way. Its surface was mostly gray and white, with thin strips of darker color marking the oceans. 3 moons orbited nearby, their surfaces covered in military installations. The garrison detected the human fleet immediately. Alarms sounded across every orbital platform and ship. The garrison commander, a veteran named, couldn't believe his sensors. "Human ships, here, at the..." "All forces engage immediately," ordered. "Protect the capital at all costs." The garrison moved to intercept. 70 warships against 200 might seem like poor odds, but they had the advantage of fighting near their home. They knew every meter of space around the planet. They had the support of powerful ground-based weapons. But they were facing human pilots who had learned every tactic, who had studied every weakness in their technology, who had beaten larger forces before. The battle for Prime began. Rachel Morgan led the first assault wave. She targeted the defense platforms, knowing they were the biggest threat. Her weapons fired with perfect precision, hitting weak points in the platform's shield generators. The first platform exploded within seconds of the battle starting. Casey Wright took her squadron against the flagship. Her ship moved through defensive fire like water flowing around rocks. She struck the flagship's communication array, then its sensor cluster, then its main weapons. In 30 seconds, she had crippled the garrison's command vessel without destroying it. All across the orbital space, human pilots executed their assignments with devastating efficiency. They fought bravely. Many of their ships inflicted damage on the human forces, but the outcome was never in doubt. Within 20 minutes, 40 ships were destroyed. The remaining 30 surrendered or retreated to the planetary surface. Commodore Stephen Palmer now held orbital superiority over his ships controlled the space around the planet. He could see the cities below, millions of civilians going about their lives, and he held enough firepower to end all of them. "Sir," his communication officer said, "we're receiving a transmission from the surface. It's Emperor." The Emperor's face appeared on the display. He looked older than Stephen expected, his gray skin wrinkled, his black eyes showing something that might have been fear. "You dare come to my world," said, but his voice lacked the absolute confidence of his earlier broadcasts. "You dare threaten the heart of the Empire." "Your fleet threatened Earth," Stephen replied calmly. "You killed millions of our people. You demanded our surrender. Now you're going to understand how that feels." "I will never surrender to primitives," spat. Stephen's expression didn't change. "Then you'll watch your empire burn." He cut the transmission and turned to his command staff. Dr. Amy Preston was there, having transferred to his flagship before the assault. She looked troubled. "We have a problem," Amy said. She pulled up scans of the planet's surface. "The military has positioned their command centers inside civilian population zones, major cities. They're using their own people as shields." Stephen studied the data. It was true. Every military target they might hit was surrounded by civilians. Hospitals, schools, residential zones. If they bombarded the military sites, thousands of innocents would die. "They're banking on us having mercy," Rachel said over the command channel. She was orbiting with the rest of the fleet, her ship damaged but still functional. "They think we won't risk civilian casualties." "Are they wrong?" Stephen asked quietly. The question hung in the air. This was the moment that would define them. They could strike without mercy, destroy the military targets, and accept the civilian deaths. It would be no different than what they had done to Earth. It might even be justified as retaliation. Or they could show mercy, prove that humanity was different, better. Captain Lisa, recovered from her earlier injuries and now serving as Stephen's second officer, spoke up. "We didn't come here to become like them. We came to stop them." Stephen nodded slowly. "Open a channel to the entire planet, all frequencies." When the channel was ready, Stephen broadcast his message. It went to every screen, every device, every communication system on Prime. "People of Prime," Stephen said, "I am Commodore Stephen Palmer of the Earth Defense Force. Your military came to my world. They killed millions of innocent people. They demanded our surrender. Now we stand above your planet with the power to do the same to you." He paused, letting that sink in. "But we won't, because we're not conquerors. We're not going to make you suffer for your emperor's crimes. Instead, we're giving you a choice. Surrender now. Order your military to stand down. Return all forces to this system, or we will destroy every military installation on and around this planet. We will eliminate your empire's ability to wage war, but we will not target civilians. We will not become the monsters that you sent against us." The broadcast ended. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then the defense minister appeared on screen. His name was, and he looked furious. "You think we will surrender because you show weakness?" demanded. "You think mercy makes you strong, it makes you foolish." Before Stephen could respond, gave an order. The planetary defense systems activated, targeting not just the human ships but also several of the planet's own cities. Areas where and the resistance had gathered, where civilians had been protesting the war. "If we fall," said, "we take all the traitors with us." The ground-based weapons fired. Massive energy beams shot into space toward the human fleet. But they also fired downward into the cities, killing thousands of who had opposed the war. Stephen watched in horror as chose mass murder over surrender. The leadership preferred to kill their own people rather than admit defeat. "All ships," Stephen said, his voice hard as steel. "Tactical strikes on all military installations. precision targeting only, minimize civilian casualties. The human fleet opened fire, but this wasn't the broad bombardment they expected. Each shot was carefully calculated. Rachel targeted the planetary defense systems, destroying each weapon platform with single shots. Casey struck at communication hubs and command centers, eliminating them while leaving surrounding structures intact. The military installations fell one by one. The human pilots worked with surgical precision, using their neural connections to process targeting data faster than any standard computer could. They struck with enough force to destroy military targets, but not enough to cause widespread collateral damage. Within 2 hours, every military asset on Prime was destroyed or disabled. The Empire's was defenseless. The orbital garrison was gone. The ground forces were disarmed. And through it all, civilian casualties were minimized as much as possible. Broadcast one final message before his command center was destroyed. You may have won this battle, but the Empire will never yield. The Armada will crush Earth, and we will rebuild. Stephen's response was broadcast to the entire galaxy, not just Prime. Your Armada has a choice. Surrender immediately and return home, or return to find ashes. We control your capital. Every civilian government official is under our protection. Your military leadership chose death over peace. We're giving your people a chance your leaders never gave us. Stand down or lose everything. The message went out on every frequency, traveling at faster-than-light speeds toward the fleets scattered across space. Toward High Marshal, still hunting Admiral Blake. Toward the main Armada, still days away from Earth. Commodore Stephen Palmer stood on his flagship's command deck, looking down at Prime. The planet looked peaceful now. The fires from the military strikes were being contained. The civilians were emerging from shelters, uncertain what came next. We did it, Lisa said quietly beside him. We actually did it. High Marshal received the message while pursuing Admiral Blake's fleet through the outer reaches. He watched the transmission 3 times, seeing the human ships above Prime, seeing the destroyed orbital defenses, seeing Commodore Palmer's ultimatum. The Empire's capital had fallen, though was in enemy hands. Everything had spent his life defending was now controlled by the species he had dismissed as primitive. His command staff waited for orders. Some looked angry, others looked afraid, all of them looked to for leadership. High Marshal, his tactical officer said carefully, we must respond, we must retake the... With what? Asked quietly. The humans hold orbital superiority. By the time we arrive, they could destroy every city on the planet. They could kill billions. He paused. But they haven't. Why? No one had an answer. Studied the tactical display showing forces across space. The main Armada was still 3 days from Earth, 800 ships ready to destroy humanities. His own fleet numbered 200 vessels. Together, they could potentially retake Prime. But at what cost? Contact the Armada's commander, ordered. Tell Grand Admiral I need to speak with him immediately. Commanded the force heading to Earth. He was younger than more ambitious, more loyal to Emperor. When his face appeared on the communication screen, saw fury in his expression. The humans will pay for this, said without greeting. When we reach Earth, we will show them what happens to species that dare defy us. Earth is not the issue anymore, said. The is. Then take it back, snapped. Use your fleet, reclaim the capital. I will destroy Earth, and we will rebuild the Empire stronger than before. And if the humans destroy Prime while we attack Earth? Hesitated. They won't. They showed mercy. That's weakness. They'll keep the intact because they lack the will to do what must be done. Or, said slowly, they showed mercy because they're confident in their victory, because they know we have no choice but to surrender. Surrender, looked disgusted. You would surrender to primitives. I would save our people, replied. Which is more important, our pride or our survival? The conversation ended badly, refused to turn back. He would continue to Earth and destroy it, regardless of what happened to the... Realized then that the Empire was truly broken, not by human weapons, but by its own arrogance. He made his decision. All ships, broadcast to his fleet. We are returning to Prime, but not to attack, we're going to surrender. The reaction was immediate. Some officers protested. A few ships broke formation, refusing to follow him, but most stayed. Most understood what had realized, the war was over. Continuing to fight would only kill more people without changing the outcome. Sent a message to Commodore Palmer. "This is High Marshal of the Empire. I am returning to the with my fleet. We will surrender peacefully. I ask only that you guarantee the safety of our people." Palmer's response came within an hour. "Your surrender is accepted, High Marshal. Your people will be safe. You have my word." But not all commanders shared wisdom. Grand Admiral continued toward Earth with 300 ships. The other 500 vessels of the Armada, hearing of this fall, had scattered or surrendered. But his loyalists remained committed to the Emperor's final order. Destroy Earth. Admiral Blake received word of the approaching fleet. His force, battered from weeks of hit-and-run attacks, began the journey back to Earth at maximum speed. But they were too far away. They wouldn't arrive in time. Earth stood alone. President Anderson addressed the planet from the Emergency Command Center. Her face appeared on every screen, her voice calm despite the situation. "My fellow humans," said, "a fleet of 300 ships is approaching our world. They know their empire has fallen. They know they has surrendered. But they're coming anyway, driven by pride and hate. Our fleet is too far away to help. We must defend ourselves with what we have." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "But we're not the same people who were attacked 3 weeks ago. We're not helpless. We're not weak. We've proven that humanity can fight back against any threat, and today we'll prove it again." Earth's remaining defenses mobilized. 2,000 pilots, the reserves who had stayed behind when Palmer and Blake took their fleets into enemy territory. They were less experienced than the veterans, but they had trained hard. They were ready. Among them was a pilot named Chris Baker. He had only completed the neural bonding process a week before the invasion. He had never seen combat, but he had watched his home city burn during the first attack. He had volunteered immediately after that. Now he sat in his ship, feeling the neural connection activate around him. His consciousness expanded into the vessel. He could sense the other pilots, all of them preparing for the fight of their lives. "All pilots, this is General Brandon Cole," came the transmission. Brandon had taken command of Earth's defense after left. "The enemy will be here in 6 hours. They're not coming to conquer anymore. They're coming to kill as many of us as possible before they die. We're going to stop them." The fleet arrived on schedule. 300 ships, led by Grand Admiral aboard his flagship, the Emperor's Fist. They emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system and began their approach to Earth. Broadcast to the planet below. "Humans of Earth, your species has destroyed the Empire. You have taken our, but you will not live to celebrate. We will burn your planet to ash, and the galaxy will remember that the Empire did not die quietly." The human fleet rose to meet them, 2,000 ships against 300. The numbers favored humanity, but the vessels were larger, more heavily armed, and they fought with the fury of beings who had nothing left to lose. The two fleets collided above Earth's orbit. Chris Baker found himself in the thick of it immediately. Weapons fire filled space around him. He dodged using instincts he didn't know he had, the neural connection guiding his movements faster than conscious thought could process. He targeted a destroyer and fired. His weapons hit the shields, which absorbed most of the impact, but he had learned from the veterans' combat recordings. He fired again at a slightly different angle, hitting the same point. The shields buckled. His third shot penetrated and struck the destroyer's hull. All around Chris, similar battles played out. The human pilots worked together with perfect coordination. They weren't individuals anymore. They were a single organism, each part supporting the others. When one pilot was in danger, others moved to protect them. When an opportunity appeared, they exploited it together. They fought well. They were veterans of countless battles, but they were exhausted, demoralized by the loss of and they faced an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. Grand Admiral watched his fleet slowly disintegrate. Ship after ship fell to human attacks. He had expected to die in this battle. He had accepted that. But he had thought his sacrifice would mean something, that he would take Earth with him. Instead, he was just throwing away lives for nothing. "All ships," ordered, "concentrate fire on the planet. If we can't win, we'll make them pay." The surviving vessels turned their weapons toward Earth's surface. They prepared to bombard cities, to kill as many people as possible in their final moments. But one ship stood in their way. Casey Wright had returned with a small squadron of Pathfinders ahead of Palmer's main fleet. Her ship, faster than any other, had raced back to Earth when she heard about the attack. Now she positioned herself between the fleet and the planet. "This is Echo 47 to all units," Casey broadcast. "Protect the planet at all costs." She accelerated towards flagship. The Emperor's fist was massive, 10 times the size of her vessel. Its weapons could destroy her ship with a single direct hit. But Casey didn't hesitate. She had already accepted that she might die today. All that mattered was stopping these ships from harming her home. Her ship moved with impossible grace, weaving through defensive fire. She targeted the flagship's weapon systems, destroying them one by one with precision shots. The Emperor's fist tried to track her, but she was too fast, too agile. The neural connection made her ship an extension of her body. She moved through space like she was dancing. Other pilots followed her lead. They focused on the ships trying to bombard Earth, sacrificing their own safety to protect the planet below. Chris Baker lost his shields protecting a damaged friendly ship. Another pilot, a woman named Price, rammed her damaged vessel into a cruiser to stop it from firing on the surface. The battle lasted 3 hours. When it ended, every ship was destroyed or disabled. Grand Admiral's flagship drifted in space, its engines dead, its weapons gone. The Admiral himself was dead, killed when Casey's attack penetrated the bridge. But the victory came with a cost. 400 human pilots had died. 400 more neural cores preserved their final moments. 400 families would receive word that their loved ones weren't coming home. Chris Baker survived, his ship heavily damaged but intact. He floated in orbit looking down at Earth. The planet was safe, but safe, that had to be enough. 5 days later, Commodore Stephen Palmer's fleet returned to Earth, bringing High Marshal and 200 surrendered ships with them. Admiral Blake arrived the day after, his fleet battered but victorious. The war was over. Ambassador Jake Martinez stood once again before the Galactic Council, the same chamber where he had watched the invasion begin, but everything was different now. "The Council demands an explanation," said the representative, a species that had remained neutral during the war. "Earth has destroyed the Empire. You have taken you have shattered their military. Many species fear what this means. Some say you should be contained." Jake listened to similar complaints from other representatives. The galaxy was afraid of what humanity had proven capable of, afraid that Earth might become the next conquering empire. When they finished, Jake spoke. "We didn't want war," he said simply. "They attacked us without provocation. They killed 12 million of our people in the first day. They demanded our surrender. We responded with force because we had no choice." "You could have stopped after defending your world," they argued. "Instead, you invaded their territory. You struck at there." "Yes," Jake agreed. "We did. And you know what we did when we controlled their capital? When we had the power to destroy billions of innocent, we showed mercy. We protected their civilians. We chose justice over revenge." He pulled up images of Prime, the planet intact, the cities whole, the civilian government beginning to rebuild. "The Empire fell because it was built on cruelty. We didn't conquer them. We freed the civilizations they had enslaved. We stopped a threat that had terrorized the galaxy for 300 years, and we did it while maintaining our values." The council chambers fell silent. Dr. Gregory Shaw, present as an advisor, spoke up. "There's something else the council should know. Our neural ship technology, it's not unique to humans. We've analyzed the data. Any species could theoretically achieve the same synthesis. What makes humanity different isn't superiority. It's endurance. It's our willingness to undergo the painful bonding process. It's our capacity to maintain individual identity while part of a collective." "We're not special because we're better," Jake continued. "We're special because we survived a harsh world and learned to adapt. That's not a threat. That's just evolution. We're willing to share our technology with peaceful species. We're willing to cooperate, to trade, to build a better galaxy together." "And if another species attacks you?" they asked. Jake's expression hardened. "Then they'll learn what they learned. We don't seek empire, we don't want conquest, but we will defend ourselves, and we will defend others who can't defend themselves. The galaxy needs to understand that." The council voted. After hours of debate, they reached a decision. Earth would not be sanctioned or contained. Instead, they would be recognized as a full member of the galactic community. More than that, they would be asked to help maintain peace, to use their strength to protect others. It was exactly what humanity had hoped for. 3 months after the war ended, Rachel Morgan visited a memorial on Earth. It listed the names of every pilot who had died in the conflict. 847 names carved in stone. She found Danny Foster's name and placed her hand on it. "We won," she said quietly, though she knew he couldn't hear. "We saved the world. I thought you'd like to know." Casey Wright stood nearby, also visiting the memorial. At 17, she was already a legend, the pilot who had saved Earth in its darkest hour, but she didn't feel like a hero. She felt tired, old beyond her years. "Do you think it was worth it?" Casey asked Rachel. Rachel thought about the question, about the millions who died, about the pilots who would never go home, about the civilians caught in the war their leaders started. "Yes," she said finally, "because if we hadn't fought, everyone would have died, or worse, lived as slaves. We chose to stand up. That had to be worth something." On Prime stood before a gathering of the new civilian government. The Empire was dead. In its place, a federation was forming. Individual worlds, free to govern themselves, working together instead of being ruled by conquest. "It will take generations to heal," told the assembly. "We have much to answer for, many species to apologize to, but we can start. We can be better than what we were." High Marshal, retired from military service, worked as an advisor to the new federation. He spent his days helping former worlds transition to independence. It was strange work for someone who had spent his life enforcing the Empire's rule, but it felt right. He often thought about his conversations with Admiral Blake and Commodore Palmer, about how the humans had every reason to destroy Prime but chose mercy instead. That choice had saved his species. More than that, it had given them a chance to become something better. 5 years after the war, a child on a former colony world asked her parent a question. The colony had been enslaved for 2 generations before the Empire fell. Now they were free, rebuilding their civilization. "Parent," the child asked, "why did the humans help us? Why did they fight for people they never met?" The parent thought about how to answer, about the stories they had heard, about the species that had ended an empire and then walked away instead of building their own. "Because when the storm came to their world," the parent said, "they didn't break, they became the storm. They learned that power without mercy is just cruelty, but mercy without power is just weakness. They found the balance, and when it was over, they chose to help instead of rule." The child considered this. Will they always be like that? "I don't know," the parent admitted. "No species stays the same forever, but I think they'll try, and maybe that's enough." On Earth, President Anderson gave a speech on the 5th anniversary of the invasion. She stood at the memorial where 847 names were carved in stone. "We remember those who fell," said to the gathered crowd. "We remember what they sacrificed, and we remember why they did it, not for conquest, not for glory, but to protect those they loved, to defend the innocent, to prove that mercy and strength can exist together." She paused, looking at the faces in the crowd, humans and aliens standing together. "The Empire stormed our world thinking we were weak. They learned different, but we also learned something. We learned that our strength means nothing if we use it like they did. We became powerful to survive. We must stay wise to remain worth saving." The crowd stood in silence for a moment, honoring the dead. Then they dispersed, returning to their lives, lives made possible by those who had fought and died. Casey Wright, now 22, stood at the memorial long after everyone else left. She still flew sometimes, training new pilots. But she had found other purposes too. She studied at university. She wrote about her experiences. She tried to be more than just a weapon. Rachel Morgan found her there as the sun set. "Remembering?" Rachel asked. "Always," Casey replied. "Do you think they'd be proud of what we became?" Rachel looked at the names on the memorial, at Danny's name, at all the others who hadn't survived. "Yes," she said, "because we didn't let their sacrifice turn us into monsters. We stayed human, that's what matters." They stood together in the fatting light, 2 survivors of a war that had changed the galaxy. 2 people who had been given the power to destroy worlds, but chose instead to save them. The Empire had stormed Earth. Humanity's merciless retaliation had driven them into oblivion, but oblivion of tyranny, not existence. A death of an empire that deserved to die, replaced by something better, something built on freedom instead of fear. And the galaxy remembered, not just the battles or the victories, but the choice humanity made when they held absolute power, the choice to show mercy, the choice that proved they were worthy of the strength they possessed. The story of Earth's war with the Empire would be told for generations across 1,000 worlds, a warning to those who might threaten others, a hope for those who suffered under tyranny. and a reminder that true strength isn't measured by the ability to destroy, but by the wisdom to know when not to. We did, Stephen agreed. Now we wait to see if it was enough. Below them, and the resistance began organizing civilian government. They arrested the surviving military leaders who had ordered attacks on their own people. They started broadcasting messages of peace to other worlds, urging them to abandon the war. The empire that had terrorized the galaxy for 300 years had fallen in less than a day. Not to superior firepower, but to a species that valued mercy over revenge, that chose justice over genocide. The question now was whether the rest of the military would accept it. He paused, looking at each pilot in turn. Emperor thinks we're primitives, animals that got lucky. We're going to teach him different. We're going to show him that humanity doesn't break. When you push us to the edge, we don't fall, we push back harder. The fleet launched 12 hours later, heading into deep space on a course that would take them to the... Behind them, Earth waited and hoped. Ahead of them, the heart of an empire beat on, unaware that doom was coming. He sent a priority transmission to the... The Emperor needed to know that humanity was not what they appeared to be. That Earth was defended by something beyond standard military forces. That any future assault would require the full might of the Empire. But knew the Emperor, knew his pride, knew his response to defeat. The Empire would come back, and next time they would bring everything. His moment, he thought about what Gregory had discovered 15 years ago. He thought about what these people had become. The first pilot approached him. Her name was Rachel Morgan. She had been a fighter pilot before volunteering for the program. Now she was something more, something new, something the galaxy had never seen. "Admiral," Rachel said, her voice steady, "we're ready." Nodded, "Then let's show them what humans can really do." The countdown had begun. In 48 hours, Commander would get his answer, but it wouldn't be the surrender he expected.